Hey everybody, the obviously not at all Spanish Fly here, and this is pretty much just something that I'm doing kind of as a bit of an experiment, if you will. Originally, I just wanted to do sort of like a way to actually record or get another playthrough of this game going, um, because personally, this is just, for me at least, this is just a game that I've been playing for years and years, like ever since it came out. Um, and I thought, like the more I went over it, I thought, why don't I just sort of do something informative as I play along and sort of give a bit of commentary and try to make it a bit of a something to help out people because I know that, well, not so much help out, but sort of talk about what I like about the game, why I've been playing it so much, and why I think that it should get a lot more attention than it does because I've always found that throughout the years, not only the game, but the series as a whole for Front Mission 3 it doesn't get as much attention as I think it should, and it got me thinking that maybe I can sort of work on something with going over and going through a bunch of my sort of favorite older games that I don't feel get as much love as they should, and anything like that. Um, yeah, I know I don't really have the best or most sophisticated of setups here, but in all honesty, this is my first attempt at doing something even remotely close to this. And while I know I'm just skipping the opening cinematics here, it's really just for time's sake. Really, I feel like it's okay to skip the opening parts of a 17-year-old game. Almost. Now, I'm just gonna go with the defaults here because why not? I'm not going to be I'm not gonna be going through and reading all the text when I play through this because, you guys, anyone who's watching this is obviously smart enough to be able to know how to read stuff, and any sort of like attempt at making my own characters with them would just come across as not that great. So I'm not going to do a disservice to the game by trying, and I'm not going to, waste either of our times with it. I'm just really going to be sort of talking through this and giving my insight and stuff like that. So this is pretty much, obviously it's the tutorial section with this, which really is not that hard to figure out. And one thing I always thought was funny on this, after beating the game, is that they're giving you the tutorial section about how to use like shotguns and how to use melee attacks, but they're giving it to you with what's pretty much like a rifle launcher. But the Shunyo isn't really one that you'd want to be using for either of those. So the whole idea of starting you off with one like that would probably I don't know, it's just something that obviously you shouldn't be trying to do later in the game. Because, and I'll explain to this a little later on as it goes in as more things come up, but granted, for the whole purpose of just getting used to moving around and how the attacks work and stuff like that, it's not any sort of big issue. I should also point out that I'm playing this on EPSXE, since I'm essentially doing all this without a capture card to hook it straight up from like my PS1 or my PS2 to put it on here. Now, I didn't you could say, oh, why did you go and do this without investing and stuff like that, but really, as I said, this is essentially just an experiment, and it's sort of like, I might invest in that kind of stuff later on, if this goes well, and if this is something that I feel I'd want to continue working on, or continue doing. Now granted, this is a long ass game, so I'm pretty sure by the time I finish it on one of the routes, let alone both of them, I'll have an idea of, you know, of where things stand, hopefully of what I need to work on, if this is something I would want to do with other games, or if this just isn't something for me. I mean, really, this is just something like, it's just sort of like a cool thing to do, I think, between, you know, between work and and whenever I have some downtime or stuff like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just sort of sitting and chilling and talking about your hobbies or your favorite game or whatever, like that. Now, I'm going to do this now just for the sake of simplicity, but in most cases you won't want to be directly in front of the enemy when you're attacking, especially unless you're using a melee Wanzer yourself, in which case you don't really have a choice. But in the case of using like a shotgun or a machine gun or whatever, you'll want to try to be actually as far away as possible. And I really shouldn't have done that though, actually thinking on it, because because despite having a pair of knuckles on the one hand, Luffy is very much a shotgun specialist, and I've seen people put him in different kinds of ones, or have said, well, you're best off keeping him with the assault style setup, or you're best off just making him into a melee Wanzer user. But every single time I've gone through, except for maybe 1 or 2 times when I've put him as a machine gunner, I found that it's just much more beneficial to keep him as a shotgun user, because there aren't really that many of those. You'll always wind up with, I mean, and yeah, I know there's only really 2 or 3 machine gun users in the game, but there's only actually 2 dedicated shotgun users, and one of those that you get isn't actually a shotgun specialist, but I'll get more into that a lot later on. And I say a lot later on because that's not going to be on the she's not going to be in the route I'm going with right now. But I mean, I could try to spoilers, but honestly, that's not really saying anything anyway. And you'll notice I'm not really going on about anything of substance here, but this is just going through this is just going through a tutorial, so it's all basic stuff that's not going to make a big difference. And there's nothing substantial coming down here, and you're not really missing anything by me not going into detail explaining what's going on or why I'm attacking from here or whatnot. And I mean, the only thing to really explain is that I'm not using the melee attack, simply because when I get the chance to, he's not going to be using a melee anymore, and it's just going to be shotgun. So I'm trying to build up a little extra EXP here while I can for free. It won't make a huge difference, but it's just worth noting. And really, any chance you can take to get free experience, you might as well take it. I think that's kind of true of all sort of RPGs or anything like that that has experience in it. Even stuff that's not really an RPG. So basically I'm just gonna save here. You'll notice I have 2 save states, but the second one is just having already passed the tutorial part here, and that's just gonna be what I load when I switch to the other route, simply because it'll save us a few minutes and stuff like that. So pretty much what's going on is main character is just a test pilot right now. There's nothing really ordinary about out of the ordinary about that. And I always thought it was kind of funny how, at least now, like 15 years later from when it came out, how it's always this thought of how the future will be like 100 years from now and stuff, but they always keep features that are really old and stuff, like, oh, this has, like, one of the things is there's web browsing and links and there's emails, and the PlateUp is these new features, but here we are in 2016 almost, or 2017, depending on when I actually upload this. And we've gone way beyond all this sort of tech stuff that's not real. I mean, aside from the obvious. Okay, and this guy here is Ryogo, or Ryogo, or whatever. I've always just pronounced it Ryogo, so that's how I'm going to keep pronouncing it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. That's just how it's been. And I can't really just up and change how I pronounce something 16 years later without it for no real reason. He will be your machine gun user, regardless of where you go. You can switch him out to other stuff because that's something you can do with anyone, but I really wouldn't recommend it. They're just talking about how the new Wanzer is pretty much like, they said it was more aggressive than they're used to, and how there's not going to be a war or anything like that, which of course would never happen. And there's actually very little in the way of showing the character sprites in this game. A lot of the talking is done with like portraits and stuff like that, which I always thought was a different little thing at the time, because usually when stuff showed up in RPGs it would be the sprite talking, or just be a text box with their name. I always liked the portraits because I felt it was a lot more expressive. And right here, this early, the game branches off entirely. It's funny because I know when I first started this, and I think it's pretty much the same with everyone, they had no idea that like this entire one simple thing here that they're talking about with Ryogo delivering the Wanzers is pretty much what decides how the rest of the game will go for you. So Kazuki's just being Kazuki. One of the things you'll notice throughout the whole game is that he's a hothead, and Ryogo's a sarcastic it's a sarcastic smartass. It's actually one of my favorite characters for that. Not just because of how he is in battle, just because of his personality and being a jokester. Then again, Kazuki's almost like comically serious. And one of the things I always like to do, because sometimes you'll get like links and things like that, is to talk to everyone every chance you can get, and there'll be cases where sometimes you have to talk to someone once or twice or whatever, and this can give you things like information on different programs that you can use for like getting a couple extra bucks, or get you upgraded training simulations or things like that. Um, and I'm actually going to try to do this with as little in the way of training simulation as I can. It's not, in a lot of cases, you're only really doing training to get skills, but since I like to think after all this time I have some basic idea of what general skills you need, and I'll get into that when they start coming up. But I won't really need it, and you probably don't want to sit through like an hour of me just going through the training mode, or not the training mode, the battle simulator, just trying to get stuff activated. So right here he asks you to go with him to drop off the Wanzers. And pretty much this, regardless of what, not regardless of, rather, I mean, based on what you pick. You either go to the Emma route or the Elisa route. I actually like both a lot, and though there are a number of things I do like on the Elisa one more, the Emma one has a lot of different things in it, and I feel almost like it's best to go through that first and then the Elisa one to get a better general understanding of things. If you go with him, you go to the Emma one. If you don't go with him, you go with the Elisa one. So for the sake of this, I'm going to go with him. Just to sort of also, I know people don't always do this, but I like to just save a lot just in case something crashes, and just because I don't really care to get into stuff too much. I actually forgot what back was on this. It's really embarrassing. I know. I've been trying to get around using it. See, so they have the different forums here, which are for like the different web pages, and they have the mailbox set up. Each person that joins you gets their own little mailbox, and this is just the basic, you know, blah blah blah. Here's the mail service. It can be used anywhere in the world. You can send and receive mailbox, emails, etc., etc. There is actually something really late in the game where you can use the mail to. Oh, it's that. You can use the mail to get a new Wanzer. Probably considered one of the best in the game. You have the different forums here to sort of go through stuff. So whenever you get like a different link, you go through it and it sort of just talks about it and goes through stuff. It's really just for the lore and getting an idea for how the whole for how like the universe or the world works in it and stuff like that. It's not really essential. No, there are a couple times when it will make things a bit easier. So I've kind of rambled on about that enough for the time being. And I always like the little sort of travel thing they have where there's not really an overworld map, since it's just sort of a very story-based game where there's not much. You can't really go wherever you want and just fight generic people. It's not that sort of game. Because it, you know, sort of in the way in Final Fantasy Tactics you can wander back and forth into battles. So what's going on here is they're building an artificial island city, essentially. And, you know, they just want to know why is the military here and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a science person, but I always questioned whether it would actually work out the way that it was portrayed here. I mean, that's just me, but who knows? So with this getting sorted out, it's just a matter of, oh, just Kazuki just thinking and being weird as normal. No one really says anything. Just in here, I'm just going through to explain. Yeah, and Raigo starts talking about Lisa, who's Kazuki's younger sister, or adopted younger sister, as he points out there. Of course, Raigo's just being Raigo. As you'd expect. So right now we're just gonna go around and sort of just head back. Nothing really important to start talking about right just now. I might be skipping through the text too fast. Hopefully that's not the case. But if it is, and someone cares enough about it to see it as an issue, I'm sure they'll tell me, because that's that's how the internet is. I'm sure anyone that cares enough to tell me anything will probably be bitching at me over a bunch of things. So what happened is we just got back and we have to go drop off some other Wanzers. And Raigo's just bitching about it because he's like, fuck, I just got off work. And he wanted to go out, and Suki's pretty much just telling him to man up. So right here they sort of explain a little bit about Kazuki and his father, who's as they say, he's a big officer, and they essentially, long story short, haven't gotten along, and it's sort of like his berserk button. You just don't like bring it up to him, and he's just pouting now because of course he is. Yeah, right now we're just going to continue this on. Oh, sorry about that. Now it almost seems, I always thought it was kind of funny in a sense, because this route is actually the more, I don't want to say calm version of Kazuki, but in a sense it very much is. It feels almost wrong to say and word it like that, but I can't really think of another explanation. Oh, gotta love these 2000 PlayStation 1 graphics, huh? All those blocky textures. You know, I kind of feel sorry for kids these days who are all graphics about everything. I've always felt that RPGs and strategy RPGs have been sort of falling off consoles for the past few years, and lately the only ones that really seem to be good are the Tales series on there, even though, well, when it comes to strategy stuff, you still have the XCOM games, which, if you haven't played them for PS3 or PS4, I really recommend you do so. A lot of the time nowadays, stuff like this seems to mostly be on handhelds like the 3DS or the Vita, which, poor Vita, never got anywhere close to the love it deserved, because it's actually a pretty underrated system like the PSP was. And as soon as we get off, of course shit goes wrong. And of course there'd be an explosion in the base, right? Saying there was an accident. And the base's security starts fucking up. Now, luckily, this really isn't anything close to a sort of difficult battle at all, and really, for the first battle in the game, you wouldn't think it would be. So the doctor's sort of telling the helicopter to get the hell out of there, though. I always wondered why he didn't just hop on it. Like, if there's these giant turrets that start. Then again, when that happened, I sort of realized why. I can't believe that's the one thing I forgot about. So Kazuki wants to fight it because he's pissed off and just wants to shoot something. Alright, was like, dude, fine. Now you can always go and check the status of whatever you're fighting. And later on you will find things that are piloted. Not everything is obviously going to be set on autopilot. Now the shotgun fires differently than the machine gun does, in terms of the fact that while it has, see, it has a different number down there than the machine gun has. Machine gun fires 10 in bursts of 10, but it randomly decides on where it's going to go. With the shotgun, it fires in a burst of 12, but it's spread out evenly between all the different parts, which means that you'll wind up getting, you'll wind up getting a little bit of damage on everything instead of all the damage on potentially one thing. Normally the machine gun will be more accurate, depending on all the bit more features and stuff like that. And luckily this mission really isn't one you have to worry about too much. Like, I don't think I've ever come close to losing it. I mean, like, I'm sure you could have tried, but it's like, really, what's the point? And normally I like to try and spread out experience if I can, but right now it's really not an issue. I like to sort of do it so safe. So like Ryogo gets a bunch, and then Kazuki gets a bunch. So we're gonna keep everyone around the same level, but considering how early in the game it is, that's not something I'm gonna worry myself about. And another thing to keep in mind later, when you get when you start getting a bigger party, is that usually whoever you have down as the first person is going to get targeted by the enemy a bit more. See, I only got gold there because I screwed around a little. So of course, since we fucked around and messed up defense special forces showed up. Ironically, we're using the weakest machine gun in the game. So the guards kind of be like, hey, don't shoot them, we asked for their help. Generic special forces shoulders like, fine, just get out. But of course, since he ended up asking about the explosion, Kazuki can't take the hint. Special forces start threatening him, because of course they do. He's like, dude, calm the fuck down. Oops. Okay, that was my bad. Got the two buttons here right next to each other, so. Yeah, I'm saving after pretty much everything, but really at this point you can't fault me too much. It's just a force of habit, and it's better to be safer than not. So naturally we get in shit. You gotta love those 90s looking computers over there. They're just saying, hey, we got in shit, so blah blah blah. Oh, my bad there. Accidentally knocked the mic a little bit. Now Kazuki's just checking his email and he gets one from Elisa, just essentially says, I mean, aside from, hey, give me a gift, she says that she was working at the base, which of course sets Kazuki off. She's been working at some lab, which of course would only be pure coincidence. And Kazuki goes into super overprotective mode here. So he wants to rush all the way back to the base to go find her. And we're just running off to the base. I feel like I could have gotten something at the hangar, but I never bothered to. So this is one of the few times the sprites actually show up. Those super blocky cars. So we're just being like, nope, you're not getting in. And what a surprise, huffing and puffing and getting pissed at them didn't do anything. So actually, I'm going to check out the hangar since I forgot to do that before. Oh, yeah, as I thought, there wasn't anything there. It's funny, I just actually never really check it out. So you'll find a lot of times when you go to a town, there's bars and there's stuff like that where you can usually just gather information about what's going on. Sometimes you'll get a bunch of links for websites from people and stuff like that so you can find out more about what's going on and sort of get a little detailed information about some of the NPCs or people you come across. So they're just explaining how Elisa was orphaned from another country and how Kazuki's dad sort of adopted her at the time and all the hardships she's had to go through and all that. And how he wants to sort of look out for her and all that sort of, you know, nice cliche stuff that RPGs love to throw out. So people in the bar sort of just heard about the explosion and they're sort of saying, hey, we don't know what's up. Of course, there's always the conspiring drunk, because really, why wouldn't there be? Yeah, see, if this guy shows you can get information from people and it gives you the address there so you can go and look at more stuff on the GDF site. It doesn't really, like, it shouldn't really give you anything right now that's that useful, but it's just sort of telling you, hey, this stuff can happen in the game, so you want to sort of keep a lookout for it. And since we've pretty much talked to everyone, there's not really anything else to do but leave. And we get stopped here, of course. She's investigating the accident too, as it says, of course. And Raigo just continues being how he wouldn't. I just pictured Kazuki just bitch slapped in there. She's like, dude, shut up. So she's trying to negotiate something. Yeah, so this would be Emma. She's pretty much she's the USN scientist, she said, and this game takes a bit of liberties with some of the other countries that are around. Like, for instance, USN is obviously the USA. Just I believe the N in USN, I believe the USN stands for United States of New America. I believe it includes sort of parts of Canada and parts of Mexico here and there. But pretty much it's the same thing. They do other changes with different countries too, but Japan's still Japan. And I'll get into those other ones later when we come along to them. Yeah, this is OCU Japan, and OCU is referring to Oceania, if you will, so, you know, sort of Japan and Australia and all of that clustered together. So she's here to investigate the explosion, and she's like, hey, help me out. And of course, I would go with the obvious question. Again, with the obvious question. Suki goes because he has a sister complex, and Ryogo goes because, hey, it's fun and he's got nothing better to do. Ryogo doing stuff because he has nothing better to do seems to be a common thing a bit later on. Or throughout most of it. So naturally the three of us are heading in, and there are some other things that are coming up that I can get into a little bit later, but I don't want to go too far along on the first one. I'm sort of only planning on in a little bit, so I'm going to make this a multi-part thing after all. And Kasuki entirely fails at trying to be inconspicuous in any way, shape, or form. So of course we're just essentially trying to sneak in by saying, hey, we've got stuff to pick up and clean up what's going on. He's like, I don't know anything on that. So Ryogo just does the dick thing. He's like, hey, we'll just dump him at the front gate. You know, something that actually took me a while to notice when I first started playing was actually the blinking thing. It's something that once you first see it, you can't unsee it after. So eventually after that, totally not bullshit conversation. Well, not bullshit in the way that it was weird, just bullshit in the way of Ryogo legitimately just bullshitting everything. And she says, hey, pull over. Like I said, Ryogo's a total smartass. It's almost impossible to hate him for it. And congratulations, you've got the Wanzas you're going to be using for pretty much the whole game unless you switch out of them. Well, I mean you're going to be switching parts, but technically now the game's actually started. And Emma's Wanza right there is a missile Wanza. And usually you'll find that as you go along, in some way they wind up falling behind a little in terms of experience. You still need one, don't get me wrong, like no matter what you should always have one in your party, but it's just for the simple fact that they typically only have 6 bullets in a sense in them, so you usually have to try to make them count and try to get as much experience as you can off of making sure to fire them when you can do the most damage. You know, notice she's wearing a backpack, which I believe has a missile reload item in it. So they're talking about, hey, was your sister in the facility? And Kazuki just sort of was like, what, you're asking me that now? Now there are some other things I'll probably go through the next part whenever I get that up, which will probably be sometime next week, I'm thinking. That will sort of just help understand or help explain things a bit more, because we'll have more to work with. Essentially, this is all just one big introduction to things, and just me sort of experimenting and figuring out on, like, not only just different levels of this, but the different audio levels and stuff too. So you'll have to excuse me if sometimes I sound a little off in terms of clarity or in terms of what's getting picked up and what's not. I won't actually fully know how this is until after I processed it and gone over and edited it together. So pretty much we're taking this big elevator down, and she's like, hey, I want to show you what's been going on, which sort of gives the impression that she knows a lot more about what's going on and what's happened than you'd think. I mean, even more than the impression you'd get from the fact that she showed up from a different country entirely to investigate something that literally just happened. Of course, Farrago's like, dude, this doesn't feel good. She's saying, yeah, this just isn't good at all. Yeah, so he asked the important point of, hey, are we starting a war here? Is something going on that we really don't want to get into? She's like, well, take a look. And the entire lab and things have been entirely just hollowed out. So I should point out that's actually pretty impressive. I mean, blockiness aside, of course. Excuse me for a minute. So yeah, that was the thing that happened. Amusingly enough, the door still works fine though. Everything else got blown to hell, but the door, no, the door is absolutely fine. I always thought that was a little funny, but hey, that's just me. Yeah, and Kazuki saying, hey, you know what's going on. And naturally the alarm goes off. Now the military's onto us, that's what. And Emma's pretty much saying, hey, they know what's up, so now they're gonna fucking kill us. Yep, sorry, I'm just rotating a little to get a bit of perspective now. Here you have, you're going to be introduced to something, the melee lancers. And I'm just going to check these and go over them. Now melee lancers have the biggest move, they have the most hit points, and they have the shortest range. And pretty much if you get hit by melee Wanzer, you're gonna lose a shit ton of health. Usually they're something you never ever want to attack in range of being counterattacked from, as long as you can help it. And I'm going to shoot at it from a distance. See, just because that's not something you want to mess with. Some block the missiles will always be asking and hoping as you go along that the missile will hit the left arm when you're fighting, especially when you're fighting a melee one. Because all enemies will usually have their weapon equipped on the left. Another thing worth noting, as you'll see here, is that if you're getting attacked by a melee Wanzer and he goes to attack you, you'll be able to counterattack first as long as you have a ranged weapon of some kind. And you'll always want to make sure, if at all possible, to try and... Oh! And Ragu got his first kill. Now would probably be a good time to sort of explain them. Now, each skill will have, as you see there's 6 different little blocks in it, and you have 4 in the computer. Each skill can only be learned up to 6 blocks of it. So if it's a 1-slot skill, like Rounds Fired is, or as I just call it, Rope Up. I've always just called it that, and for the sake of this I'm going to continue calling it that through it. A single slot skill can be learned 6 times individually. A 2-slot skill can be learned 3 times. The 3-slot skill can be learned twice. And any skill that takes up 4 slots or more can only be learned once. Now I've always thought the reasoning for this is so you can't continually be learning like 4-slot skills or whatever again and again, and so you can't essentially chain 3-slot skills in a row by having it keep activating. Yeah, I can get more into the different kinds as we go along. But that's just a basic sort of introduction to how they work and everything like that. And usually you'll find that you'll get attacked in waves. And see here, I could let him attack first and just sort of take the hit, but since I get to shoot him first, the arm should go off. And surrendering, the enemy surrendering is how you'll get new parts and stuff like that, which is one of the most important things to do, especially early on when you don't have money. I'm just going to rotate the camera a little bit just to make sure. If you notice me only rotating it one way, it's because I forgot what the button is to rotate it the other way again. Sorry, just taking a second to rotate that back. You always want to try to put yourself in a bit. And usually what you'll be able to do is, if you get an opponent or an enemy wants it in such a way that you've gotten rid of its weapon arm, you've usually like neutralized it in a sense. Because if you've got it so that, if you've got it so that, say, you've got it so that a melee Wanzer doesn't have anything to punch you with, then you don't really have to worry about them. If you have so a machine gun Wanzer doesn't have something to gun you down around with, then you're good too. And I'm just out of range, which is fine. I'll just go back and just end that. Now, the computer does grade you on things, obviously, but sometimes getting the highest grade isn't necessarily the best for making the game easier for you. And he is just not going to leave him alone. Now you'll notice that the Missile Wanzer has the lowest amount of health, and that's, truth be told, that's a pretty common thing. Sort of shotgun Wanzers sort of have the second highest. Machine gun Wanzers are about in the middle. Rifle Wanzers have the second lowest, typically. There's also stuff with the different move ranges. Like, as you can see, Emma's moves a lot less than Suzuki and Ryogo do. That's just sort of how it is. You'll always have like hard blow with stuff. And fuck, this is gonna hurt. Now, one of the benefits of getting to go first is that sometimes you'll be able to stun them. Which I'd heard something about there being how different attack types have different potential things that you can do. Just had a bit of a technical issue there, sorry about that. So I'm probably just going to finish this off here. Then maybe, I don't know, then maybe call it a day. It's funny because early on, the actual, hard blow attack this is where I'm going to try and see who has the most to potentially get from this. As you see, Em only has the one missile left. I'm probably going to just use this guy down. Now, that fucking happens. But either way, the pilot damage skills are good if you want to, especially good if you want to try to get to whoever it is to eject. Or not to eject, but if you want to. Not to eject, but if you want to try to hijack a bunch of monsters. And they're things you can chain together too. Now, the main downside with them is that they sort of only do a set amount of damage based off each kind of attack. Like if it's a missile, the pilot damage will do less than if it's a sniper rifle or if it's a melee. Though I have heard people say that it's based actually on weapon type and not just the weapon. And that the piercing ones, like the piercing melee attacks, actually do more damage than the impact ones, like the knuckles. As you saw there, we got the I got the first sort of I salvaged the first set of ones you can get. And as the game goes on, you'll be using parts from a bunch of different ones to sort of upgrade and customize things. You can learn a bunch of different skills and have a bunch of different attributes and stuff like that. But there are a lot of different more things that you can do in it when it comes to customization. And a lot of the fun is really just experimenting with it and finding out what you can on your own and sort of, trying to get a feel for it for what works for you, because not every weapon type and everything like that is best suited for everyone. So pretty much right now it's finding out, shit, we know what happened. We saw what the explosion site looked like, so obviously we're going to be seen as, well, we're kind of in trouble, essentially. If you want to put it mildly. So she's saying, hey, calm down, even though even though I may have figured this was going to happen, just try to get out of here. And she's saying, hey, I'll get you out of here if you stick with me. She's explaining, hey, if we go up, we'll be screwed because they'll be waiting for us, so let's just stick underground. And then we can get up from the back, essentially. Well, up the back where we go straight around to the front anyway. She's like, don't worry, I got a guy on it. She's saying, hey, just fill up your stuff. It was always funny she talks about being resupplied and stuff when shotguns and machine guns don't actually need to fill up their weapon. And on that, we are at an intermission, so I think that this is a good place to sort of call it right here. I'm not really sure entirely how I'm going to be working this. I don't have a set schedule or anything like that. I'm probably just going to do it sort of bit by bit as it goes and keep it like that. So yeah, hopefully this works out, and hopefully this will be something that as I go with it, people will actually like and enjoy, or the 5 people that might come across it have been looking for something like this. Because I mean, really, I don't really want to be saying, oh, this game is new, or oh, this is popular, or whatever, and just try to go with it for that. That's not the point of this. I mean, ideally, the point is just to do to do and go through stuff that I enjoy, and sort of maybe find other people that enjoy it, or open their eyes on some stuff that maybe they hadn't thought of before. And really, if even one person decides, hey, I'll try the game, then that's good on them. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it for me right now. So I guess until next time, yeah. Until next time, take it easy.